Oh hey, and welcome to the start of another reading vlog. This one's going to be a FairyLoot reading vlog, which I'll pretty much always just have going in the background of all of the other vlogs because there's always a FairyLoot to catch up on or more coming in, which we love. So I have one DNF and one book that I have finished for this vlog so far. So the DNF was Silver in the Bone by Alexandra Bracken, which of course is unfortunate. It is a beautiful edition, but just didn't end up working for me, and I was a little bit hesitant because, one, I'm not particularly drawn to Arthurian legend stories. You know, I've had some that I've enjoyed, but not typically drawn to Arthurian legend, which is kind of what this is inspired by. Two, I did not love lore by this author, which was a different FairyLoot book that they had some years back. And, you know, I didn't think it was a bad book. I just wasn't, and there were some things I liked about it, but I wasn't hooked. I wasn't sucked in. There was some sort of disconnect there. And that's kind of exactly how I felt about this one. I actually was enjoying the start of this one. So in this one, you're following our main character. I'm already blanking on her name, Tasman. You're following our main character, Tasman, and the setup is pretty fun. So she is a hollower, and essentially means that she and her brother kind of go into different tombs, crypts, things like that, take artifacts, take things that could be of value, whether that be in general or magically of value. She also has this like side tarot card reading thing to help bring in some money as well. Her brother is cursed to turn into a wolf periodically, and there are ways that she has been able to kind of help him, kind of prevent him from fully turning, but it's getting harder and harder, and it's clear that the curse is getting worse, and so she's wanting to find some way to help her brother. And she, through one of her jobs, so typically hollowers are hired by someone who's looking for a particular item, and so as she's delivering something to one of her clients that she was, you know, finding something for them, she gets wind basically of this other artifact that is going to be incredibly dangerous, difficult to get to, but will hopefully be able to actually help her lift her brother's curse. And you know, the vibes at the beginning were pretty cool. I was kind of into it. But once we got farther in and deeper into the Arthurian legend, and they essentially were in another place for kind of the bulk of the Arthurian legend part of it, to find this artifact, I just got less and less into it, and it's hard to describe why, but it just wasn't sucking me in, and I was realizing that even if I finished it, it probably was going to slip from my mind very quickly. I probably wasn't going to be too drawn to read the sequel, and I don't have to spend my time finishing a book if it's not pulling me in. So, you know, unfortunate, but it is what it is, and, you know, you win some, you lose some. Not every book that FairyLoot sends is going to be a hit. Most of them have been, and, you know, every now and again there are just going to be some that don't quite work for you, and unfortunately that was the case here. But yeah, it is hard to describe why, just, and there were some things happening, and it was kind of the same feeling in lore too, of like, things are happening and I feel like I should be interested in them and interested in the action that's going on here, but for some reason I'm just not. Anyway, but yeah. And then the next one I read was Seven Faceless Saints by M.K. Lobb. This one was more successful for me, and the world and vibe and kind of atmosphere here I think was really fun. Actually, I think it was a similar kind of atmosphere and vibe to City of Dusk by Tara Sim. So I feel like if you enjoyed that one, feel like this one could be a really cool option. So it's in some ways also kind of a similar setup where there are these different to City of Dusk, kind of a similar setup in some ways, because in this one you're also following, there's a kingdom, there's an area that's divided into different sections, and these different sections kind of represent different or followers of different saints, and there are descendants of these saints, that might have magic of varying types and to varying degrees. Some don't have magic, and so for the people who have magic, they're kind of in a higher class than the people who don't, and use their magic to fulfill different roles in society that kind of keep things going. And one of, kind of the followers of one of the saints, Chaos, before the story starts, there's some sort of war between the followers of, some of these different saints and the group that follows the Chaos saint have kind of broken off. And there's actually another war that's kind of going on as a result of that, that's kind of lingering tensions between this group. And so the followers or the disciples of Chaos might be coming back to try to wreak more havoc. And so there's this war going on in the background. And at its heart, it's a murder mystery. So one of the, there's kind of one of these descendants that does have some magic that is found dead. And one of our main characters is tasked with solving his murder. There are also some murders of some other kind of non-magic, common everyday folk that are going on, and he is pretty explicitly told to ignore those deaths and just to focus on solving the murder of the person who had magic. Which is something that our main character doesn't necessarily want to do. He feels that these deaths are linked for various reasons, and so he wants to figure out what's going on, and feels that the only way he's actually able to solve the death of the person that he's been tasked with would be to work on solving these other murders as well, and to figure out what's going on. So that's one of our main characters. Another one of our main characters is someone who kind of came into her magic late, and so she is now one of the kind of followers of a different saint, but she's not really that devout or that into it, and she's just trying to survive and kind of figure out what she wants to do. She's also has been in support of basically a rebel group that no longer wants to see. So one of the aspects of this war that's going on is that only people who don't have magic are forced to be drafted for this war, because the people who have magic are too busy doing important things, running this city and running this kingdom, and they can't be bothered to be on the front lines, essentially. And so there's a rebel group that is trying to correct this and to end the war if they can, or try to figure out a way to move forward where there isn't war, but also to kind of highlight the injustice of just certain people being selected for a draft and then other people don't have to face that. And so, so it's at its heart a murder mystery, but there are some other cool world building elements. As I said, the vibe, the atmosphere of the world, I think were just kind of fun to follow and intriguing. And it was fun to follow our character, who's both kind of on the inside as someone who recently came into her magic and is technically someone who's protected in some ways, but also only recently came into her magic and very much has sympathies towards this rebellion. And so she's trying to figure out the murder, or who murdered the people around her in the city who don't have magic. She's trying to solve their murder, and our other main character is trying to solve the murder of the person who had magic and was kind of high up in this order. And so they cross paths, and actually, I say they cross paths, they come back into each other's lives. They have a history, a romantic history, and so, but it was kind of tainted by some things that happened before the story starts that have to do with this war, and, you know, things that happened between their parents and involving this war have come between them and mean that they don't want to talk to each other anymore and aren't in each other's lives, but they come back into each other's lives through trying to solve these murders. And so I think the plot was intriguing. I think the murder mystery aspect was fun to follow. The world building, the atmosphere, I think were pretty fun. The thing that didn't work for me was the romantic connection between the two characters. It's so hard to rely on connections that happened before the story starts and when the characters were younger. So a lot of the, like, the pining and the yearning is, you know, them remembering how things were before the war when they first met and first fell in love, which is fine. It's, you know, that can be part of a second chance thing, is remembering what there was before. But they truly, especially one of our characters, like, truly has reason to not want to be involved with the other. And it just seemed like it was hard to just have a remembering some things about the past and just sudden thoughts of just, I don't know, it just seemed to be random thoughts of, you know, they would be thinking about this murder mystery and then suddenly they're thinking about that other person and how they just have to have them in their life even if they have reason to hate them. And I don't know, it just felt a little forced, and just, you didn't really get to see the chemistry because it all happened before the story started, and they're trying to fight some chemistry along the way because, you know, she doesn't want to get involved with someone who did what he did, and, you know, he's trying to forgive himself and trying to move forward. But I just didn't buy it. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe that they would get over those things. I didn't think that their history necessarily really mattered in terms of being able to get over what happened, such that they would want to start something again, even if there was a little bit of chemistry that they were remembering from before. It just didn't, I don't know. But all of the chemistry that they're relying on, for the most part, happened before the story started, and then it's just random forced things that didn't really seem natural, but it seemed like there had to be some sort of romance put in. And so, okay, sure, here's a romance. I don't know, it's just kind of how it felt to me. And, you know, having some sort of history, I think, did play a role in allowing the characters to make certain decisions and actually decide to, like, there were some interactions with decisions that they made in the present day with regards to this investigation where I could see that history playing a role and why it was included. But I don't know, just the entire romantic connection between those two characters just didn't do anything for me. Anyway, so those are a couple of the FairyLoots I've read recently, and there are some more that I would love to read that I have on my shelf, and so I'm sure there will be some more coming soon. The one that is coming in June is very much a summer fantasy, so I might actually include that one in a summer fantasy vlog that I will be putting out. So that one I might include there, but some of the other FairyLoots I have will probably include in this vlog once I get around to them. But yeah, we'll see when I get around to another FairyLoot. So I've read another book for this vlog. This is Threads That Bind, and this is by Kika Hatsapulu. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly based on the way the narrator pronounced it. Anyway, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. How gorgeous are these sprayed edges? Anyway, This one was a lot of fun. So in this one, we're following Io, and Io is the youngest of 3 sisters. So her and her sisters are descendants of the Fates, and they each have a different ability. So the fate that they're a descendant of, or the fate that they have the powers from, involve being able to see the threads that bind people together, and kind of a physical manifestation of that bond between people in the form of threads. And so there's like a life thread, and you have threads that bind you to people, places, or things that have a lot of meaning to you. And so the descendants of this fate come in triplets. So the older sister can create threads. The middle sister can manipulate or kind of adjust the intensity of those threads. And then Io, the youngest, is the cutter, who can actually cut these threads. And so Io is actually someone who's kind of a private investigator for hire, in a sense. So she is hired to use her ability to see threads to answer certain questions or investigate certain things. So people will, for example, hire her to see if their spouse is cheating on them, and the difference is that she'll actually be able to see what the bond is like between those two people, how intense the thread between them is, and things like that, where she can help answer some questions based on the threads between people that other investigators might not be able to answer. Anyway, so that's kind of the setup, and why she is in a situation where she's doing something for her job, she's investigating, and she actually witnesses a murder. And the person who did the killing, the weird thing is that their life thread has actually been cut, which normally means that that person should be dead. But they're still, I say alive, but they're still there with their life thread severed and basically causing havoc in the city. And so she also, in that process, comes across our other main character, who she realizes is the person that her fate thread is bound to. And so she realizes that and it doesn't always have to be a romantic thing. They can be fated to be integral in each other's lives or very close in some sort of way, but it can also be a romantic kind of, you're fated to be lovers situation. And so she comes across the boy that is connected to her fate thread, and fate threads are pretty rare, and he kind of works for this mob boss type character. And so she kind of gets wrapped up in the investigation to kind of figure out why these people who have had their life threads cut, how that's possible, why they're doing what they're doing, what's going on. And she, gets caught up in that investigation and is trying to unravel what's going on, who the players are, how they're connected, how that connects to some things that have happened in the city's history, and why it might trace back to the events that happened a good handful of years before the story starts. And so I thought it was super interesting. I thought it was super entertaining and engaging. I enjoyed the writing, and I was just overall interested in the mystery and interested in seeing Io. And why am I blanking on the Ede? Yeah. And so I was very interested in watching Io and Ede going around trying to figure out more information, and it was entertaining. I'm, again, not sure if this is going to be my favorite FairyLoot ever, but I'm very intrigued to read the next one and just see where things go. So there are a couple more that I have on deck. It's currently September as I'm filming this clip. There are a couple more that I have on deck for September, so I should be checking in on this one pretty soon. So here to check in, we have quite a bit to catch up on, and I have some unfortunate news, my friends, and that is that I have decided not to finish or DNF'd 2 FairyLoot books, which is pretty rare, but again, no subscription box is going to be able to cater to 100% of their audience 100% of the time. Some of them just aren't going to work, and that's okay. So let's start with the ones we burn, and this one I think I mentioned I had DNF'd the first time I tried it last year. This is actually a book from last year, and I got about a quarter of the way through then. I got about halfway through now and was just feeling that same sense of disengagement that tells me it's time to put a book down. And since this is the second time I've tried it, I think it might just be time to accept this one wasn't for me, even though so much about the premise and the setup ticks so many boxes for me and I feel like I should enjoy, but sometimes that happens. I don't think it was the audiobook narrator. I actually really enjoyed the narrator, but anyway, I think I gave some of the basic premise here when I first checked in, that our main character is promised in this political arranged marriage to uphold their part in a treaty, but really they actually want to kind of see what they can do to test this treaty, and maybe the treaty isn't working for them anymore, so they might want to just burn it all to the ground. And so she actually has agreed to accept this political arranged marriage with the ultimate goal of killing the prince. But there are some witches that are getting sick, and there's kind of this sickness going around, so she's trying to figure out what's going on with that. And the prince and some of the people around him aren't quite what she expected, and she gets caught in this investigation to try to figure out what's going on with the witches. And there's a lot here to enjoy in terms of the investigation, some of the banter with the characters, the witch aspect of this, and some of the world building I thought was pretty cool, but just something wasn't working for me, and it's hard to describe what it was. But anyway, sometimes you just gotta cut your losses. And then I also got about halfway through Forged by Blood, and I think I had checked in towards the very start of the book, which I actually was really enjoying that initial set of chapters that actually take place when our main character is about 10, and they need to try to hide their magic. Their magic is kind of unique to their people, I think, and their group was conquered, and so they need to hide their magic. And her mom is trying to heal someone. They're ultimately betrayed by that family and turned into the authorities. Her mom is killed in that process. This is, again, in the first few chapters. And so our main character is basically biding her time for revenge. And then the next part of the book takes place about 10, 11 years later, when she's 19, 20, around there. And she has been brought in by a different family and is trying to learn to hone her magic and be able to use it without it being too obvious, basically. And so she's trying to do that while finding a good opportunity to seek revenge, and that comes when she is asked by someone to take part in this scheme that involves kidnapping a prince, and the person that she's working with will try to use the political leverage that he would get from that to help her people. And so there's a lot there that I should really like, again, but about halfway through I was just feeling that same sense of disengagement, and which is really unfortunate because, again, there's a lot to like here about some of the world building elements, and not anything about the writing that I wasn't getting along with or anything. Just something wasn't clicking, and maybe it's the time of year. I face the same deadline at work every year at the end of September, and so summer through to the end of September is always just a crazy time, just mentally at work, and it just gets to be mentally exhausting. And so maybe it's just my brain space right now. Maybe I'll try to come back to this one, we'll see, but for now, at least, I have put it down. And it felt very young adult to me, which isn't a criticism or something wrong with a book. I really enjoy young adult fantasy. I subscribe to FairyLoot's YA box. I enjoy a ton of YA fantasy, but it felt very young adult, but was marketed as adult and was in their adult subscription box. And so, you know, I just had different expectations for how it would feel and the vibes. And it very, like, if you just handed me the book and said, does this feel like it's marketed towards young adult or adult, I would have said young adult. And it's not just because the character is around 19. It felt very young adult in the vibes and the writing, which again is not a bad thing, just not what I expected going into that book. And so maybe that discrepancy between expectation and execution, or what I was getting, maybe was a little bit of the disappointment. But anyway, so I have one more book for this vlog before I'll wrap it up, and maybe it will be a quick check-in when I'm done, because it's the second book in a series, and so I don't really know how much I'll actually be able to say about it anyway, but I will check in when I've finished that one. So I think I last updated this vlog a while ago, and I think I was starting the shadow cabinet. I'll need to review the clips and hope that that's right, but I actually did end up putting down the shadow cabinet about halfway through. It was just slower than I wanted at the time. I think I'll come back to it at some point, but it wasn't holding my attention. But all hope is not lost for FairyLoot, because I then did pick up Bonesmith by Nikki Palpretto, and I absolutely adored this one. So you're following our main character. It's been a minute, so let me remind myself of the main character's name, Ren. So Ren lives in a place where there's a lot of danger, and there are bonesmiths, and there are also the people that they protect, who basically help cleave souls from their bodies once the person is dead. But if their souls are kind of hanging around, then there are people who kind of will cleave the soul away from the body, and there are bonesmiths who help protect them, because the dead can provide varying levels of danger. And so she's going through some trials to be a bonesmith, and she is sabotaged and ultimately doesn't complete the trial on time, and she's basically shunned and told to go told to go to another place kind of far away, and it's not really a very prestigious position. It's basically one where not much supposedly happens, and she's just kind of there biding her time until she can come back and hopefully be able to kind of reclaim some of her family's honor, in a sense. And when she gets there, the prince is coming to visit, and he is ultimately kidnapped, and so she sees an opportunity to prove herself by going to rescue the prince. And along the way, she comes across someone who is supposed to be her enemy, but they both have kind of the same goal in the moment, and they decide to work together to rescue this prince and kind of track down the group of people who've taken him. And stuff starts going from there. She learns more about the world. She learns that some things that she thought aren't necessarily true, and she needs to learn more about what's going on to really see what's happening, and to make some decisions about where she wants to fit in and prove herself in society, and how she really wants to help make things right. And I love this. The atmosphere, the vibes were immaculate for this time of year, so would highly recommend reading in October. I finished this at the very beginning of October on the way to the UK. I'm not sure if this vlog will be up before the UK vlog or not, but there's a vlog of the UK, so it's either already up or will be up soon. But I finished this at the very beginning of October on the way to the UK, but like perfect, immaculate October vibes. It's just a dark, creepy atmosphere, and I was just sucked in. I was sucked in, and had a really great time with this one. So FairyLoot has redeemed itself for this vlog at least. And yeah, so again, most of the FairyLoots I get I absolutely adore, but some of them aren't going to be hits. So I'll just go ahead and wrap it up here. I intended to have all of these vlogs out before that trip to the UK, but I'm going to hopefully be able to catch up on vlogs coming out and put out this vlog. There's a fantasy reading vlog as well, and then the UK vlog. So hopefully we'll be able to catch up. But thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more bookish content. And yeah, I'll leave my Instagram link down below, as well as more information about how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement. And I will see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.